there's a long tradition of successful musicians overcoming the challenge of visual impairment, from St Cecilia, the patron saint of music herself, through bluesmen like Blind Willie McTell, jazz players like George Shearing, and singers like Stevie Wonder and Andrea Bocelli. Blind and partially sighted artists often talk about having an inner vision. Stevie Wonder used that as the title of one of his most famous albums, and in this programme we'll meet a group from London called the Innervision Orchestra and another from Ohio called the Innervision Duo. This piece of music by the Australian trance DJ Sam Kuzic is called Innervisions. But it's one thing making music when the important skills are banging, blowing and plucking. But what about in the digital age, when so much creative activity is screen-based? How do you compose or record music using screens which you can't see?
Originally, most of this sound recording, sound editing was all done with actual knobs and buttons and actual tape that they could touch and splice. And now that it's all gone digital, it's all being represented only to one sense, which is vision. And so the main problem is trying to find ways to give them access to that information, which is now only available to one sense instead of multiple senses.
That's the psychologist Dr. Michael Prue from the University of Bath. He's working with a new device which can help blind people to see by listening. We'll have a demo later. And throughout the programme, we'll follow the multi-ethnic Innervision Orchestra as they prepare for a prestigious concert. Their leader, Balaji Srivastav, is in the rehearsal room in East London.
We meet here mainly to encourage blind and partially sighted people to think that they are not alone.
Who's going to give me a D, please?
My name is Uttara Sukanya Joshi.
My name is Gauri Sanratnaraja.
My name is Ziyad.
My name's Abby Baker.
I play the violin originally.
I play percussion.
I play piano, violin and clarinet.
This instrument here with me is called oud, a very common instrument in the Middle East.
Each member of Innervision brings their own unique style, their way of playing, because they're all from different countries. And I've learned so much from the other guys in the group and trying to incorporate some of that into my own playing and to make my own playing quite unique.
I think what I like is how you can be open to be creative and Balaji's guidance.
We'll be back with the Innervision Orchestra soon to hear how rehearsals are going. But let me introduce you now to some of the other blind musicians wrestling with the challenges of what some people see as a disability, but others recognise as an asset, almost a gift. The Innervision duo is singer Janine Blackwell, she's black, and guitarist Sam Shepherd, he's white. They were born within weeks of each other in the same hospital in Columbus, Ohio.
Her and I met at around age 3, and we would ride in the same transportation vehicle together. We would do the same classes together. Her and I pretty much have done everything together throughout our whole lives.
Sam and I have known each other since preschool. He's really supportive of me, and he encourages me when I'm feeling down, and we motivate each other, and he's just a pleasure to be around.
I was a premature infant, and I am actually one of 3 triplets, and we were all 3 born 12 weeks early. And all 3 of us came down with a disease called retinopathy, and somehow my disease got progressively worse to its most severe stage. And as a result, around 3 or 3.5 months later, I lost my sight.
I've never had any sight. I was born premature and blind.
And the players wanna play, and the haters wanna hate.
Matthew Whitaker from New Jersey is just 18, but he's already an acclaimed and award-winning multi-instrumentalist.
I was born 3 months premature, weighing 1 pound 11 ounces, and the oxygen that was given to me damaged my eyes. The doctors gave me less than 50% chance of survival. I've always been in love with music. My toys had music. My grandfather gave me a small Yamaha keyboard at the age of 3. And I taught myself nursery rhymes. When I was 9, I taught myself the Hammond organ. When I was 13, I became the youngest endorsed Hammond artist in its 80-plus year history. And when I was 15, I became the youngest endorsed Yamaha piano artist. My dad and I would play jazz on the radio in the car. Ever since then, it's been my favorite genre to play and listen to. My classical piano teacher would go over the black keys, and there's one group that has 3 notes. So what we did was we started from the top of the piano all the way to the bottom, and move down, move down.
Club DJ Lance Blaze, known as Monix, is based in Philadelphia. He can't see the crowds going wild, but his dark techno mixes are filling floors throughout the US and Europe.
So right now, out of my right eye, I can't really see anything at all. And then out of my left eye, I basically see like if somebody threw mud onto a windshield and you're trying to kind of see out that windshield. I have had a few surgeries in my left eye. I also get injections in both eyes once a month. That helps sustain the vision so it doesn't get any worse. It can't get any better, but it won't get as bad as quickly. I have blood vessels that grow in the back of my eyes, and they use the laser to shrink the blood vessels before they can explode. They're pretty painful. It feels like somebody's like kind of like whacking you in the eye with a nail almost. They hit you basically your eye each session like almost like 300 times. It's just intense. Having the screen for DJing, I think it's an important piece of it. And again, that's when I really am thankful and I really value like the tiny bit of vision that I do have left. If you have 20/20 vision, you don't have the same value for that vision, I think, as somebody who has like a little tiny bit of it. I think I even value my little bit of vision more than a completely blind person would, because they don't have anything. So especially if they were born that way, they don't miss it. You know, where I wasn't born that way, I learned to like live my life with vision, and then it was like mostly taken away from me. So that little bit that's left is just like invaluable.
Monix's DJ kit is an extraordinary collection of plugs, cables and knobs. It looks like something from a 1950s sci-fi movie.
The first part of my setup is the engine. That controls all the synthesizer sounds, the voices, so anything that's not drum related is controlled by here. I control 5 different synthesizer sounds with that machine, and it also clocks the rest of the system and keeps everything in sync. Moving inside the rig, I have the Erica Synths drum sequencer, and it controls all the drums. The next in my rig is my mixer. I also have a reverb tank, the Bitbox, which is the other sampler I have. It's really like a live production, almost like a one-man band. If I go through the airport, they tell me that it looks like some sort of bomb or something.
iHateMornings.com.
Back in their rehearsal room in Hackney, Balaji and the Innervision Orchestra are working out a set for their big summer gig.
Today we are rehearsing for Southampton Mela. We are performing as orchestra of 5 people. Okay, let's try again.
Okay.
I'm playing sitar, and Uttara is singing, and Gao is playing kanjara, which is like a tambourine, but without any bells. Abby is playing violin. Ziad's piece, which is from Lebanon, he's playing oud. First of all, Mela told me that we want some dance music, we want some fast music. So then it was a difficult question for me to how to do with 5 people. But luckily those 5 people have chosen very good music.
Okay, let's do that, yeah? Let's try it. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Innervision Orchestra is only made because I want people to see how blind people are so capable to perform with others, with everyone. We may be blind, but we are good musicians. Sometimes better musicians than they are.
We'll be in the crowd at the Southampton Mellor to hear how the Innervision Orchestra get on. Now, one problem which all blind and partially sighted performers have to deal with is not being able to actually see the audience they're playing to.
Some audiences are really hard to gauge.
Sam from the Innervision duo.
It all depends on like the culture they were brought up in. You know, some people were brought up in the culture like, you know, you can clap your hands and dance and like, you know, kind of say, oh, yeah, come on now, yeah, you got this, oh yeah, you got, you know, it's like, and just like stomping their feet and just that audible feedback that they give to us. Whereas like other audiences, they just might think it rude and they just sit completely still. There's no hand clapping, there's no dancing, there's no singing of any kind. They just sit there and listen to the music. And so, you know, we don't have any audible feedback to work off of. But audiences like that, you know, we don't know how they feel about us until after the performances, where they like fall all over each other trying to get to us and to let us know, oh, you did such an amazing job, like that was the best entertainment we've had in forever. It was like we would never know until now, because you know we didn't have that auditory feedback from the audience.
How I feel when before I go on stage, I'm always excited. You know, if it's a new place I've never been to before, I sometimes get a little bit nervous.
Ladies and gentlemen, Matthew Whitaker, Nate Smith.
Once I start playing, I feel, you know, a lot more comfortable. And once I know, like, you know, how the piano feels, or like whatever instrument I'm playing on stage, if it's organ or drums. Also, as far as the audience interaction, I can really tell, you know, listening to them, you know, I can tell when they're really into the music, because I always, you know, look towards them to smile sometimes at them, you know. You know, and I always like to talk in between songs, like, how y'all doing? You know, or whatever. Thank you so much. Hey, how you doing?
And it's even worse when you're in a club and every once in a while you're getting a flash, because that flash now, to me, in my right eye, it almost gives me like a headache for a second. You know what I mean? Because it's intense. It's like you're going from complete darkness to this light just like hitting you in the face.
Sometimes I'll be facing in an awkward way away from the audience, because I think that, you know, they're in front of me, and then I hear some feedback from my mom, like, you know, turn a little bit to your left, you know, the audience is this way. And like, I didn't know. I was like, oh really? And also, I would say one of the blessings of being blind too, apart from the struggles, is a lot of sighted people, when they are performing, they tend to get real nervous and stage fright in some ways. And that is because, you know, they can see the audience in front of them. They can see everybody. Whereas, you know, Janine and I don't have to worry about that.
No, we don't.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
If a phone goes off during a show, sometimes I would play the ringtone.
Smartphones are just one example of technological advances which can bypass blind people. Here's Balaji again.
Because most of the world is made for sighted people, the recorders, the keyboards, I can't read display. For example, I have got a recorder, which is a 16-track recorder. When I press the button, I have to remember how many times I have to press the button, how many times I have to turn the knob. And then that way I can reach there. But if I make one mistake, then I'm completely in a different world. So first of all, I have to find a menu. Then I have to find how to deal with particular menu. And if I have to deal with the sub-menus, that becomes outrageous for me, very, very difficult. I can't do it. But if I had a digital display reading system, then I could understand what's going on.
So how can 21st century tech help? I went to the University of Bath's Department of Psychology to meet Dr. Michael Prue and watch a demo of The Voice. That's small v, capital OIC, small e. It's an app which uses the camera in a smartphone to translate what it sees into sounds.
So what I've turned on here is the Voice Seeing with Sound app for Android, which uses the camera on the mobile phone to provide the visual input, and then it transforms the image into sound by scanning it from left to right. It just keeps scanning over and over again, every second, and it turns the pixels, which are the squares that break up the image, into different frequencies, such that things that are high up in the camera's view have high frequencies, things that are low in the camera's view have low frequencies, similar to high notes and low notes. And it just keeps repeating that over and over again. So what I'm going to play here first is a pencil, which is just laying lengthwise from left to right. So you hear sort of a steady frequency as it goes back and forth from left to right. Now I'll turn the pencil so it's upright. So now the pencil's hard to hear because it's just a very brief blip where you hear all the frequencies at once. And so I'll say right now when it hits it, now. It's just a short blip right in the middle. And so it goes from being something very narrow to something that's long. But that's something very straight. Another option is I took a cup from the drinking fountain. It's white, it's brighter than the pencil, and it's looking at it from above, so it's just completely round. So now you can hear as it hits the cup, the frequencies immediately start from the middle and go from low to high and then back down to the middle again. And oftentimes people almost describe it as having more of a rounder sound because they hear it sort of expanding and contracting as the cup does as you move from left to right. And just for fun here, I also have an R2-D2 toy, which is just more complex than those two, and it gives you a sense of how complex vision is. So it probably sounds a bit like R2-D2 talking from the Star Wars films. And that's just because as it scans from left to right, R2-D2 has all these different shapes on it. There are different colors, different contrasts. Some are lighter, some are darker. And so you're hearing all that complexity come across as the voice scans it from left to right.
So what we're doing here is teaching our brain to see without our eyes. Is that right?
That's right. So the idea is that this is just information, and we have different ways of using our multiple senses to get information from the world. With vision, we're usually getting lots of information, light from all different directions, colors, contrasts, orientations. And so what we're simply doing with this technology is transforming that information into something the ears can receive. And then all the hard work is left up to the brain to try and then take that information and figure out how it maps onto what the original image is. Being a musician is a different experience from being someone else. So therefore, being a blind musician is having two different sorts of experiences than someone else that somehow come together in interesting ways. Because when someone is a musician, they're learning to hear differently and to combine what they're hearing with the other senses in different ways. And we've found in some work we've done here at the University of Bath that being a musician actually changes the way you combine things you see with what you hear. And so it's just training that does that. And it's similar with being blind. Because you don't have the visual input, you're actually training yourself to use your other senses to a greater deal than most people would.
Matthew Whitaker uses special software to turn text on his laptop into speech.
Adobe Audition CC.
There's Adobe Audition. Now I can also do this.
60%, 70%, 90%,
I can make
80%. Closing, main menu, audit. WhatsApp notes. Adobe Audition pages.
So I can.
Doc.
What was it?
Pages. Untitled free. Selection of you.
Oh, I can.
Tabs. Untitled free. Tabs. H. What you. At G. Doing. Question. New line. Body. Edit text insertion at end of text. Hello, my name is Matthew. How are you doing?
I can use VoiceOver with the trackpad, which is underneath the spacebar, and I can use gestures instead of the keyboard commands to navigate.
As we heard earlier, some musicians say that not being able to see is actually a creative advantage. Michael Prue says there's some scientific evidence that that's true.
Speaking to people who have been congenitally visually impaired. They have had experiences of describing that they can hear things other people don't seem to hear, but they don't always realize it. So one example is I have a colleague who's a senior lecturer in computer science, and I've had him come give lectures here before. And the one time he walked into the room, he had never been in before, and he said, "Oh, it seems like there's a lot of people here today." And so the students in the front row looked at him astonished. And he explained that it's nothing magical. It's just he walks in and he can hear the way the sound is bouncing off the walls. So he gets an idea of how big the room is. He can tell by how many voices are talking, how many people might be there, and he just combines that information naturally. But it's not like he just has a superpower because he's blind. It's because he's been relying on that his entire life. And so, if anything, those of us who are sighted are probably ignoring those sorts of things we could hear, but we just haven't had the need to really train ourselves to be such listening experts.
You picked up on the use of the word Innervision, and that's the title of this show, and also the name of two of the musical groups that we've talked to. Is there such a thing for a visually impaired person that they do have some kind of inner vision?
Absolutely. So I think something that holds us back is we traditionally think of an inner vision in psychology as being imagery. And imagery has that core word image. And so we think it's just this forming of a visual image in our mind. But that leaves out the fact that we have mental imagery for all of our senses. That even comes across in the way we dream. And so that's probably one of the most interesting things that comes across from work with the visually impaired is they still dream. Even if you're congenitally blind, you still dream. But you don't dream in images. Your dreams reflect your daily life. And so your mental imagination is full of sounds, it's full of touch, it's full of smell, it's full of taste. And they very much still have all of those representations, that's perhaps a little more of a neutral word than imagery, in their brain.
So one of the interesting things for us is that musicians who are visually impaired have been very common for centuries, but it must be getting a bit harder now we're in the era of screens and, making music digitally. We've talked to people in this programme who've wrestled with those challenges and to a great extent overcome them. But from what you've learned, what are the big challenges for their brains?
Well, the big challenge for them are more on the side of inclusivity and accessibility. So originally, most of this sound recording, sound editing was all done with actual knobs and buttons and actual tape that they could touch and splice. And now that it's all gone digital, it's all being represented only to one sense, which is vision. And so the main problem is trying to find ways to give them access to that information, which is now only available to one sense instead of multiple senses. As you could hear from some of these examples with the voice, which is just one approach to trying to turn images into sound, it's really hard because vision is processing a lot more information than our other senses normally does. And so to some extent, it might mean building new ways to interact with the screen or having technology like this that can sort of reverse engineer and retransform what's been turned into an image back into something they can hear.
So is it true then that you could retrain a brain to see without eyes?
Yeah, as a psychologist, that's one of the most fascinating things about this technology for me is its potential for helping us understand how the brain learns complex things like this. And when it comes to that inner vision or mental representations people have, is trying to understand how they can not only hear this as just all these frequencies, but actually have an idea in their mind of what that actually is out there in the world. And already with the voice, which is available for free, so a number of people have been using it for years, a couple of users, some congenitally blind, some who have become blind late in life, have reported having those inner visions of what they're hearing through it. And some of those who became blind later in life actually describe it as seeing. So when they hear that sort of complex sound, they actually see the circular cup in their mind's eye. And so they're somehow connecting what they're hearing to their memory. And what's fascinating about that is that's actually what we all do. Our brain doesn't have direct access to the information out there. We're seeing this information that's hitting our retina, but we're combining it with our memories. And that's really what we're seeing in our mind is that combination of what's out there and what we remember. but they're doing it in a way where they're receiving the information through their ears and connecting that to images in their mind, and then actually seeing with their ears by being able to use this.
Well, that technology might eventually help, but Janine and Sam from the Innervisions duo say they've already developed some coping mechanisms.
One of the things that I just cannot explain is that we can read each other's minds during a song. She knows, I don't know how she does it, she's really incredible, but she can know exactly when to end on a song, just, I don't know how, she just senses it. That's just the best way I can explain that, because we don't have any hand gesturing going on because of course we can't see each other. She can't see me nod toward her, like if we want to switch, like do a solo or end on some, it just comes, I don't know, it's just like, I don't know if it's like brain waves or something of that nature. I don't know. I don't know. We just seem to find each other and just we can communicate with each other, and we call it our secret twin language, even though we're not twins.
Right.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in Southampton, Balaji and his band are appearing at the annual Mela.
We're on the world stage at the moment where we're doing our first performance in about an hour, I think, so we're just here for a sound check, just soaking up the atmosphere and getting really excited about our own performances.
I guess I always do get a bit of nerves before the performance, but I think probably once we get started, I'll relax into it.
Very excited to be here.
The International Innervisions Music Group, everybody!
Okay, I want to hear how many people are there. Can you clap, everybody?
The Art of Now Innervisions was a Folder & Co production. I'm Trevor Dan, the producer was Faith Howley, and we'll leave you with some inspiring words from Matthew Whitaker.
Once other people see you or hear you, then that encourages others. What I'm doing, y'all can do.